in the far reaches of space, where stars seemed to stretch endlessly like a sparkling ocean. A civilization known as the Zorathans had built an empire so vast and powerful that few could imagine it. Their cities floated among the stars, enormous metallic structures that gleamed with advanced technology. Each world they controlled had been transformed, reshaped according to their precise standards. Every planet had massive energy grids, transportation networks that spanned entire continents, and fleets of spacecraft that could move faster than light itself. The Zorathans were not just a dominant species. They were known as a force of nature in the galaxy, feared and respected by all who knew of them. Their intelligence, their advanced weaponry, and their unmatched discipline made them nearly unstoppable. But even the most powerful civilizations could not predict everything, and that was about to become clear far from the heart of the Zorathan Empire. In an uncharted sector of space, a lone research vessel drifted silently among the stars. Its name was Valera, and it carried a team of scientists and explorers dedicated to mapping unknown territories. Unlike the military fleets that patrolled the Empire, Valera was meant for discovery, not combat. Its crew spent months navigating star systems that had never been explored, documenting new planets, analyzing strange celestial phenomena, and recording data about distant quasars and black holes. They were pioneers in every sense, and their work was considered critical for the future growth and understanding of their empire. But exploration always carried risk. Space was not just vast, it was unpredictable. While Valera drifted deeper into unfamiliar regions, they unknowingly entered a dangerous zone patrolled by a rival alien faction, one that had been in conflict with the Zorathans for decades. These enemies were just as cunning, technologically advanced and ruthless as the Zorathans themselves. When the Valera crew first detected signs of approaching ships, they initially assumed it was a routine patrol from their own empire, something they had seen countless times before. But the signals were different: erratic, hostile, and unmistakably aggressive. The crew had only moments to react. The enemy ships launched a sudden attack, firing with incredible precision. The shields of the Valera were strong, but they had never been designed to withstand the firepower of a fully armed assault fleet. Explosions rocked the ship, alarms blared through the corridors, and the lights flickered as power grids failed in sections of the vessel. Crew members ran to their stations, trying desperately to stabilize systems, repair damaged engines, and plot an escape route. The air was thick with tension, every second feeling like a lifetime. Outside, the stars themselves seemed to blur as the ships maneuvered violently through the debris-filled sector, dodging and weaving in a deadly dance. Captain Lyra Tolan, the leader of the Valera, knew that their chances were slim. She had trained for emergencies, studied countless scenarios of space combat, and led her crew through simulations of worst-case events, but nothing in her experience could prepare her for the suddenness and ferocity of this attack. Her voice, calm but firm, echoed through the command center as she issued orders with precision. Divert all power to shields, evasive maneuvers at maximum, prepare the escape protocols, and for the love of the stars, stay focused. The crew obeyed instantly, moving with disciplined urgency. But even their best efforts seemed insufficient. As the battle raged, the Valera sustained critical damage. The engines began to falter, systems malfunctioned, and communications were almost completely jammed by enemy interference. The realization hit the crew like a physical blow. If they didn't get help soon, this mission, this ship, and perhaps even their lives would be lost. It was then that Captain Tolan made a decision that could change everything. With the ship barely holding together, she ordered the crew to send out a distress signal à universal source, encoded in a way that could be recognized by any intelligent civilization, not just their own. It was a gamble. The galaxy was vast, and the chances of anyone receiving the signal were astronomically low, but it was their only hope. The SOS was transmitted with all remaining power. It pulsed through space, carrying not just coordinates but a desperate message. The Valera was under attack, and the crew needed immediate assistance. The signal raced through light years of empty void, passing stars, planets, and asteroid fields. It traveled farther than any message the Zorathans had ever sent before, venturing into regions of space that were considered unexplored, untouched, and unmonitored by any known empire. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, humans were making their own cautious steps into space. Earth, still young in its technological development compared to the Zorathans, had begun sending spacecraft and satellites into orbit, experimenting with propulsion systems and exploring nearby planets. Their civilization had a reputation for ingenuity and resilience, qualities that often compensated for their relative lack of advanced weaponry. Humanity's scientists and engineers were curious, innovative, and sometimes reckless in the best possible way. They tried things no one else dared attempt, and it was one of humanity's deep space monitoring stations that picked up the faint, unusual signal. At first, the signal puzzled the humans. Its structure, language, and frequency did not match anything they had encountered before. But as they decoded it, a shocking realization spread through the control room. This was not a normal communication. It was a distress call from an intelligent civilization. The message spoke of destruction, desperation, and the immediate threat to life. Every scientist and strategist in the room understood the gravity of the situation. If they ignored it, countless lives could be lost. If they responded, humanity could be stepping into the unknown, facing dangers beyond imagination. Despite the risks, the decision was made. A small, carefully assembled team was prepared to launch a rescue mission. Unlike the powerful fleets of the Zorathans, humans had neither speed nor heavy weaponry. But they had one advantage that mattered more than anything in such situations: creativity. The humans began calculating routes, designing strategies, and preparing technology in ways that their species excelled at: thinking outside the box, anticipating challenges, and planning for contingencies no one else would consider. As the human spacecraft prepared to leave, tension was palpable. This mission was unprecedented. The team knew that their actions could determine not only the fate of the Valera crew but also how humanity would be seen in the vast galactic community. The story of the Zorathon's distress, the peril of the Valera, and the daring response by humans was about to begin, an event that would mark the first time two civilizations, separated by unimaginable distances, would connect in a life-or-death situation. And so, as stars streaked by and the engines roared to life, humanity ventured into the unknown. They were young, untested, and fragile compared to the empires that ruled the galaxy. Yet, their courage, resourcefulness, and willingness to act against impossible odds would set the stage for an encounter that no one in the universe would ever forget. The SOS had been sent, the humans had heard it, and the story of the Valera was about to unfold in ways that no one could have predicted. After humanity received the SOS from the distant Zorathon research vessel, the weight of the decision to respond settled heavily on the team. They knew that space was vast, unpredictable, and extremely dangerous, but the call for help left no room for hesitation. Every human involved understood the risks. Their spacecraft, though advanced by Earth standards, was almost primitive compared to the warships of a civilization like the Zorathans, and yet they could not ignore a life in peril. The moral imperative, the responsibility to help another intelligent species, overpowered every fear and calculation of danger. The first challenge was distance. The Zorathan vessel was light years away, in an uncharted region of space. Even traveling at maximum speed, it would take months to reach them, and the vast emptiness of the void presented dangers the humans had never faced. Navigating without the familiar markers of their solar system was like sailing across an infinite ocean with no stars to guide them. To overcome this, the human engineers had to make extraordinary calculations, constantly adjusting for gravitational pulls from distant planets, asteroid belts, and rogue debris drifting silently in the darkness. Every calculation had to be precise. One mistake could send them hurtling into oblivion or missing the distress signal entirely. As the spacecraft moved closer to the coordinates, the crew faced another serious challenge: communication. The SOS was encoded in a language and frequency completely alien to humans. Translating it required ingenuity, patience, and a lot of guesswork. The human linguists and scientists worked around the clock, analyzing patterns, comparing symbols, and slowly piecing together a message of desperation. The crew learned that the vessel was damaged, that their engines were failing, and that they were being pursued by an aggressive alien armada. They had little time. Each passing hour increased the danger exponentially. The humans also had to confront their own limitations. Their ships' weapons were designed for defense and small-scale engagements, not for combating a full-scale alien armada. Their shields, while advanced, could only withstand minor collisions or attacks, not concentrated fire from multiple hostile ships. For the first time, the crew realized that ingenuity and strategy, rather than brute force, would be their greatest weapons. They spent days running simulations, developing contingency plans, and testing unconventional tactics. They considered using stealth maneuvers, exploiting gravitational fields for rapid turns, and even creating decoys to confuse the enemy. Every decision required careful thinking, because in space, mistakes were often irreversible. As they approached the sector, reports came in from their monitoring systems. The alien armada was moving closer to the Valera. These were not ordinary ships. They were large, heavily armed, and coordinated with deadly precision. The humans watched as the armada moved in formations designed to trap any escaping vessel. For the humans, this was more than just a tactical challenge. It was a test of nerve. They had to anticipate movements they could barely comprehend, predict enemy behavior in an unfamiliar environment, and find a way to reach the Valera without getting caught in the crossfire. Each day of travel was filled with tension, the crew constantly scanning for signs of enemy patrols, adjusting routes, and refining their approach. The journey itself presented unique physical and psychological challenges. Life aboard a spacecraft in deep space was isolating and exhausting. Crew members faced long hours of work, minimal sleep, and the constant pressure of knowing that failure could be fatal. Yet, despite these stresses, they remained focused, driven by a shared mission. The human spirit, resilient and adaptable, shone in the darkest moments. They learned to rely on each other, sharing tasks, offering encouragement, and maintaining a sense of humor when tension threatened to overwhelm them. The camaraderie became a crucial asset, allowing them to face obstacles that might have broken less cohesive teams. Along the way, the humans began to study the Zorathan technology they had picked up from the SOS signal. They discovered patterns in the energy readings, anomalies in the vessel's structure, and traces of defensive mechanisms that could be leveraged. By understanding these systems, humans realized that even a vessel as damaged as the Valera could be assisted with precise interventions. They began developing specialized tools, programming software to interact with alien systems, and planning ways to boost the Valera's failing shields remotely. Every improvement increased their confidence, showing that even in the face of superior technology, cleverness and persistence could make a difference as they neared the distressed location. The humans also faced the challenge of the unknown. The sector was full of natural dangers, asteroid fields, radiation pockets, and gravitational anomalies that could pull a spacecraft off course. Navigation became a careful balancing act, constantly recalculating trajectories to avoid collisions while staying on a direct path to the Valera. The crew discovered strange cosmic phenomena, like pulsars emitting deadly bursts of radiation, and nebulae that distorted their sensors. Each obstacle required ingenuity and quick thinking, and the humans were forced to adapt on the fly. Mistakes could destroy the ship, yet they pressed onward, driven by the lives they sought to save. Meanwhile, the psychological burden of facing a hostile armada loomed ever larger. That humans knew that the alien ships were fast, deadly, and likely expecting to find an unprotected vessel. They had no illusions about the danger. Engaging the armada directly could mean death for everyone on board. They had to rely on strategy, using speed, stealth, and clever maneuvering to avoid detection and interception. Each encounter with enemy scouts tested their nerves and their skills. The crew learned to stay calm under pressure, making split-second decisions that could mean survival or destruction. Despite these challenges, there was also a growing sense of excitement and purpose. The crew realized that this mission was unprecedented. Humanity, still considered a minor player in the galaxy, was now stepping onto a stage where the stakes were immeasurable. They were venturing into the unknown, potentially saving lives and demonstrating the capacity of their species to act decisively and creatively. Every success, no matter how small, strengthened their resolve. Each obstacle overcome became a testament to their ingenuity and courage, showing that even in a universe dominated by advanced civilizations, humans could make a difference. As they closed in on the coordinates, the tension reached its peak. The Armada was almost in sight, and the Valera's signal was growing weaker, indicating that the vessel was under increasing strain. The humans had to move carefully, balancing speed with caution. Any misstep could alert the Armada and compromise the mission. They ran final simulations, double-checked their calculations, and prepared for every scenario. The crew knew that this phase of the mission, the approach, was one of the most critical. Success depended not only on their skills but also on their ability to remain calm and coordinated under extreme pressure. In these final hours before contact, the humans reflected on what they had learned. They had discovered the importance of teamwork, the value of creative problem-solving, and the power of courage in the face of overwhelming odds. They had seen firsthand how resourcefulness could compensate for limitations, and how determination could carry them farther than technology alone ever could. These lessons would not only guide them through the immediate challenge but also shape the way humanity approached future encounters with the unknown. Finally, after months of careful planning, calculations, and cautious travel, the human spacecraft appeared near the coordinates of the SOS. The Valera was barely visible, its hull scarred and damaged, drifting helplessly among the stars. The Armada's presence was imminent, and the humans knew that the next phase, the actual rescue, would test everything they had prepared for. Yet, despite the fear, exhaustion, and uncertainty, there was also a sense of purpose and determination. Humanity had come this far, and they were ready to act. They were about to prove that ingenuity, courage, and cooperation could make the impossible possible. The stage was set. The humans had overcome the first set of challenges: distance, navigation, communication, and understanding an alien species. Now, they faced the greatest test yet, approaching a vulnerable vessel under threat of annihilation. Every calculation, every decision, and every act of bravery would matter. The story of their mission, and the fate of the Zorathan, was about to unfold in a dramatic, high-stakes encounter that would leave a mark on both species forever. Asterisk. As the humans drew closer to the coordinates of the SOS, the tension aboard their spacecraft reached unbearable levels. Every crew member felt it not as a distant worry, but as a physical weight pressing against their chests. They had spent months planning, calculating, and preparing for this moment. Yet nothing could truly prepare them for what awaited. Outside the viewports, the blackness of space stretched endlessly, punctuated only by the faint glow of distant stars. But the void was no longer empty. It was alive with the threat of the alien armada, moving faster and more deliberately than the humans had anticipated. The reality of the situation hit the crew like a shockwave. The Valera was in immediate danger, and they were the last hope. The human ship's sensors first picked up the armada at extreme range. At first, it appeared as tiny blips, almost imperceptible against the dark backdrop of space. But as the minutes ticked by, the blips expanded into massive, menacing vessels, each bristling with weapons and energy projections that glowed ominously. The humans realized that the Armada's fleet was far larger than they had anticipated, far more coordinated, and far more dangerous. For a moment, doubt crept in. Their ship was small, lightly armed, and their shields were far from sufficient to withstand a direct attack. Yet retreat was not an option. The SOS demanded their response, and the lives of the Zorathan crew depended on them. The critical moment came as the Armada altered its course, heading directly toward the Valera's location. It was clear now that the alien forces intended not to negotiate, but to destroy. Every sensor reading confirmed it. Energy signatures flared as weapons powered up. Shields flickered as defensive systems activated, and the Armada's fleet tightened its formation, leaving no gaps. Humanity's crew knew they had to act, and act quickly, because hesitation could mean annihilation. The command center erupted with activity, each crew member moving with urgency, executing tasks they had practiced countless times in simulations. But now, under the pressure of real danger, Captain Tolan, though not human, had prepared her crew for extreme scenarios, but the humans were now facing a situation unlike any training exercise. Every maneuver had to be calculated with precision, every decision timed perfectly, and yet there was no margin for error. The humans decided to divide their focus. One team would attempt to reach the Valera, while another would create distractions to slow down or confuse the alien Armada. They relied on speed, agility, and cleverness rather than raw firepower. Their plan was risky, almost desperate, but it was the only chance they had. As they approached the distressed vessel, the first skirmish began. The humans activated decoy small drones programmed to mimic their ship's energy signature. These decoys darted unpredictably, drawing fire from the alien Armada. Explosions lit up the darkness, illuminating the void for brief moments and revealing the scale of the threat. The human shields shuddered under concentrated fire, their systems groaning under the strain, yet the decoys worked. The Armada's attention was partially diverted, giving the human ship a narrow window to approach the Valera. Inside the Valera, the Zorathan crew watched in awe and disbelief as an alien species completely different from their own maneuvered with precision, deflecting attacks that would have destroyed most other vessels. Communications were fragmented at first, but soon the humans and Zorathons began exchanging information, sharing critical coordinates, system status, and strategies. The two crews, though separated by species and language, found common ground in their shared struggle. Humanity's ingenuity combined with the Zorathans' knowledge of their own vessel to create a coordinated defense that neither side could have achieved alone. But the Armada was relentless. They adapted quickly, shifting formations and targeting the decoys with greater accuracy. Energy blasts scorched space around the human ship, forcing evasive maneuvers that tested the limits of their engines and the patience of their crew. The humans had to balance aggression with caution. Every decision could save or doom lives. In a daring move, they utilized gravitational anomalies from a nearby asteroid field, slingshotting their ship in unpredictable arcs that confounded the Armada's targeting systems. It was a dangerous gambit, but one that bought precious time for the Valera to stabilize its engines as the humans drew closer. They discovered weaknesses in the Armada's formation. Their simulations had predicted that an over-reliance on coordination made the enemy predictable, and now they saw it in action. By exploiting gaps and blind spots, the humans could maneuver between ships, avoiding the main line of fire while creating openings for the Valera to escape. Each successful maneuver boosted morale, but the crew knew that the real test was still ahead. The Armada's flagship, a colossal warship bristling with weapons, was closing in, and it seemed capable of tracking every move the humans made. The humans realized that brute force alone would not win this battle. They had to combine speed, stealth, and cunning. Engineers quickly modified systems to interface with alien energy signatures, allowing temporary interference with enemy targeting sensors. Weapons officers repurposed energy modules to create bursts of electromagnetic interference, short-circuiting the Armada's weaponry in brief, critical moments. Every innovation, every quick-thinking adjustment, pushed them closer to survival. It was not just skill. It was creativity, courage, and the ability to improvise under pressure that made the difference. As the critical moment intensified, the human and Zorathan crews worked as one. Using a combination of evasive maneuvers and calculated attacks, they forced the Armada to scatter momentarily. The Valera, whose engines had been critically damaged, received remote assistance from human technicians, boosting shields and repairing essential systems just enough to maneuver. Time and again, the Armada tried to close in, and time and again the humans found a way to counter. The battle became a delicate dance, a test of nerves and intellect. With every move potentially fatal amid the chaos, the human crew demonstrated a resilience that was remarkable even to themselves. They communicated with precision, adjusted strategies on the fly, and never lost focus despite fatigue, fear, and the constant threat of destruction. Even when the flagship unleashed volleys that could have shattered their hull, they anticipated the trajectory, altered their course, and survived. Every success reinforced their belief that, even in the face of overwhelming power, resourcefulness and determination could tip the scales. The critical moment reached its peak when the Armada attempted a coordinated strike aimed directly at the Valera. The humans had only seconds to react. In an extraordinary display of ingenuity, they activated a combination of decoys, energy bursts, and gravitational maneuvers that created chaos in the enemy ranks. The flagship's weapons misfired, smaller vessels collided, and the Armada's formation broke apart in confusion. This was the turning point. The humans had survived the critical onslaught, and the Valera had a chance to escape. Afterward, the human crew took a moment to process the intensity of the battle. They had faced a force far superior in firepower, technology, and numbers, yet through creativity, coordination, and courage, they had turned the tide in a matter of minutes. The experience left everyone changed. They had learned firsthand the importance of quick thinking, adaptability, and working together across species and cultures. The critical moment had tested every limit of their abilities and strengthened the bonds among the crew. In that phase of the mission, the humans realized something profound. This was not just a battle for survival. It was proof that intelligence, bravery, and teamwork could challenge even the most overwhelming forces. They had faced annihilation and emerged not just alive, but victorious. The lessons learned in those moments, the improvisation, the calculated risks, the unwavering focus would guide them for the remainder of the mission and beyond. With the Armada momentarily scattered and the Valera stabilizing, the humans knew that the resolution was still ahead, but they had overcome the worst of the immediate danger. They had survived the critical moment, demonstrated their ingenuity, and earned the trust of the Zor. What had begun as a simple mission to answer a distress signal had transformed into a high-stakes test of courage, as skill and intelligence. As the dust of battle settled, the human crew prepared for the next phase, leading the Valera to safety and turning their tactical advantage into a permanent escape. They had faced a critical moment and survived, but the story was far from over. The events of this phase would be remembered as the point where humanity proved that even a young, inexperienced species could stand against overwhelming power and not just survive, but thrive. After surviving the chaos of the Armada's assault, that humans finally had a chance to turn the tide fully in their favor. They were exhausted, their ship battered, and yet every member of the crew felt a surge of determination. The critical moment had passed, but the mission was far from over. Now came the resolution, the phase where strategy, and bravery would combine to secure victory not just for themselves, but for the Zorathans who had sent out the SOS. Every maneuver, every decision now mattered more than ever. The first step in the humans' plan was to stabilize the Valera. The Zorathan vessel had sustained severe damage during the initial attacks, its engines partially disabled, its shields failing, and critical systems offline. Without human assistance, the Valera would be an easy target for the returning Armada. Using advanced remote repair technologies, the human engineers worked tirelessly to interface with the alien vessel. They adjusted energy flows, rerouted power, and implemented temporary shielding enhancements. Every action required careful calculation. One wrong input could fry the systems entirely. Yet, through patience, focus, and a willingness to improvise, the humans managed to bring the Valera to a condition where it could maneuver independently. Meanwhile, the alien Armada was regrouping. The scattered fleet, still formidable, began to close in again, seeking to crush the intruders who had defied them. But the humans had learned from the previous encounter and were ready. They've studied the enemy's behavior, noting patterns and predictable responses. Using these observations, they devised a plan to exploit weaknesses in the Armada's formation. It was not enough to fight head. Their advantage would come from strategy, not sheer firepower. They decided to create confusion within the enemy ranks, using a combination of decoys, electromagnetic interference, and clever maneuvers to turn the Armada's strength into a liability. The humans executed their plan with precision. Small drones and decoy ships were deployed in unpredictable patterns, drawing fire and attention away from the Valera. At the same time, bursts of energy interference temporarily disabled enemy targeting systems, causing panic and disarray within the Armada. Ships collided, communications faltered, and the once coordinated force became disorganized. The humans took full advantage of this chaos, leading the Valera through gaps in the enemy lines and gradually pulling it out of immediate danger. Every action was calculated, every move deliberate, and yet executed with the speed and precision that only desperate courage could inspire. During this phase, the human crew also realized the importance of combining their efforts with the Zor. Communication, though difficult, became more effective as they shared critical data about navigation, energy flows, and enemy tactics. The two species, so different in physiology and culture, worked seamlessly together under pressure. The humans provided ingenuity and adaptability, while the Zorathans contributed deep knowledge of their vessel's systems and capabilities. Together, they formed a team capable of challenging an Armada that would have crushed either species alone. This partnership, forged in the fires of desperation, was crucial for the resolution of the conflict. As the humans and the Valera maneuvered through the remaining forces, they began to strike back in subtle but decisive ways. Using their understanding of alien technology, they identified vulnerabilities in the Armada's energy distribution and propulsion systems. Targeting these weak points, they caused ships to falter, slow, or misfire. It was a slow process, but methodical and highly effective. One by one, the Armada's ships became less coordinated, more vulnerable, and increasingly frustrated. But humans were turning the tide not through direct combat, but through clever exploitation of the enemy's limitations, of strategy that relied on intelligence, observation, and creativity rather than sheer force. At one point, the flagship attempted a concentrated attack, aiming to annihilate both the humans and the Valera. It unleashed a barrage of energy weapons so intense that space itself seemed to ignite. The human crew responded with a combination of evasive maneuvers, energy shields, and carefully timed interference signals. The flagship's weapons misfired at critical moments, its formations broke, and the humans gained the upper hand. It was a dramatic and nerve-wracking confrontation, but through teamwork and quick thinking, they survived, and the flagship was forced to retreat temporarily. By the time the immediate threat of the Armada had been neutralized, the humans had not only protected the Valera, but had also demonstrated that even a young species could stand against overwhelming odds. The Armada, once confident of easy victory, was now scattered, confused, and severely weakened. They had underestimated the humans' ingenuity, adaptability, and willingness to act decisively. The humans had turned what seemed like an impossible mission into a strategic triumph, proving that courage combined with intelligence could rival raw power. In the aftermath of the confrontation, the humans and Zorathans worked to ensure the vessel's long-term stability. Engineers and technicians from both sides repaired critical systems, reinforced shields, and optimized energy flows. The Valera's engines, once nearly destroyed, were restored to partial operational capacity, enough to escape the sector and head towards safer regions of space. The human crew, exhausted but triumphant, realized the significance of their achievement. They had not only answered a distress signal, but had fundamentally altered the balance of power in that sector of the galaxy. Throughout this phase, the human crew reflected on the lessons of the battle. They understood that raw strength alone was rarely sufficient. Observation, quick adaptation, and teamwork had been far more effective than any weapon. They had learned to trust their instincts, to think creatively under pressure, and to work seamlessly with a species entirely unlike their own. This combination of courage, intelligence, and cooperation had proven decisive, and it would remain a guiding principle for humanity in future encounters with the unknown. The resolution also marked a significant turning point for the Zords. They had witnessed the humans' capabilities firsthand and were forced to reconsider their assumptions about young species in the galaxy. The humans had acted decisively, with courage and ingenuity, achieving what no one expected. The bond formed between the humans and the Zorathans in those critical hours laid the foundation for future cooperation. For the Zorathans, this encounter was not just about survival, it was a lesson in humility and the potential for alliances across species. As the Valera and the human ship moved away from the immediate danger, a sense of calm began to settle over the crews. The Armada was scattered, the vessel was stable, and the immediate threat had been neutralized. Yet the experience left everyone profoundly changed. That humans had proven themselves capable of extraordinary feats, while the Zorathans had gained newfound respect and hope for collaboration with other species. What had begun as a desperate mission to answer a distress signal had evolved into a historic event, demonstrating the power of determination and courage in the face of overwhelming odds. Even in the quiet moments that followed, as systems hummed and sensors scanned the surrounding space, the human crew remained alert. They knew that the galaxy was vast, full of dangers they could not yet imagine, but they also knew that they had faced and overcome challenges that few could have survived. Their experience had taught them resilience, strategic thinking, and the importance of trust, not just among themselves, but between species. These lessons would guide them for the rest of the mission and beyond, shaping humanity's approach to future challenges in the cosmos. Crew members allowed themselves brief moments of relief, sharing quiet smiles, words of encouragement, and even laughter. They had survived, they had succeeded, and they had done so against seemingly impossible odds. The sense of accomplishment was profound, but tempered by the understanding that the universe was vast and unpredictable, and that future challenges would require the same courage, ingenuity, and determination. Humans had not only completed their immediate objectives but had also laid the groundwork for a deeper relationship with the Zords. Their actions had saved lives, preserved the integrity of the Valera, and demonstrated the unique strengths of their species. The resolution was not just a military or technical success, it was a triumph of collaboration, creativity, and courage. Humanity had shown that even a relatively young and untested species could face overwhelming danger and emerge victorious, setting the stage for future encounters and adventures in the vast, mysterious expanse of space. After the dust of battle had settled and the alien armada had retreated, a quiet sense of relief settled over the human crew and the Zorathans aboard the Valera. The immediate danger was over, and the once perilous situation had been turned into a remarkable victory. Yet, even in this calm, the reality of what had happened began to sink in. Every crew member reflected on the enormity of the events, the narrow margins by which they had survived, and the lessons they had learned along the way. The mission had tested them in every possible way, physically, mentally, and emotionally. The humans began by helping the Zorothans fully stabilize their ship. Systems that had been barely functional during the battle were repaired and optimized. Engines that had sputtered under strain now roared back to life. Shields that had flickered dangerously in the previous encounters were reinforced, stronger than ever. The humans had applied their own technology to improve the alien systems, integrating makeshift solutions that the Zorothans themselves had not considered. The collaboration between species was extraordinary. What had started as a simple rescue had evolved into a profound partnership, one that transcended language, biology, and culture. As the Valera regained stability, both crews began to process the significance of the events that had just unfolded. For the humans, it was a moment of self-discovery. They had been tested in a way no one on Earth had ever experienced. Facing a fleet of superior alien ships, they had relied on intelligence, creativity, and courage to survive. They had discovered that their ingenuity, something often underestimated by more advanced civilizations, was a force in itself. Every small decision, every calculated risk, had contributed to the outcome. The crew realized that bravery without planning could have led to disaster, but when combined with careful thought, it could achieve the impossible for the Zorothans. The humans had demonstrated that even a young and relatively inexperienced species could rise to a challenge that others might consider insurmountable. They watched with a mixture of awe and respect as humans applied their knowledge to stabilize systems, improvise solutions, and navigate the complexities of space combat. This respect went beyond mere admiration. It planted the seeds of trust, the recognition that in a universe filled with unknown dangers, allies could come from the most unexpected places. The Zorothans had sent out an SOS expecting help, but they had not anticipated the ingenuity and resilience of those who answered it. As both crews worked together, there was also time for reflection on the personal experiences of the mission. Many humans had faced fears they never imagined, making split-second decisions that carried life-or-death consequences. Each crew member thought back to the moments when survival seemed impossible, the close misses with enemy fire, the critical failures of systems, and the split-second maneuvers that had saved the Valera. They realized that courage was not just about boldness in action, but about the ability to remain calm, think clearly, and adapt under extreme pressure. These lessons were deeply ingrained, shaping their perspective on not only space exploration but also life itself. The experience had a profound emotional impact. Crew members bonded through shared danger, creating connections that went far beyond simple camaraderie. They had seen each other at their most vulnerable, at moments of fear, exhaustion, and doubt. Yet, in those same moments, they had also seen one another at their most courageous, resourceful, and resilient. Trust had been forged under fire, and that trust became a foundation for cooperation and morale. That humans realized that teamwork was not simply about dividing tasks, it was about supporting one another emotionally, mentally, and physically, especially in moments of extreme stress. As the Valera moved to safer regions of space, both crews took time to analyze what had happened and what could be learned for the future. The humans studied the alien Armada's tactics, understanding patterns, weaknesses, and strategies that could be used in future encounters. They've realized that the universe was vast and full of dangers, and that preparedness, combined with ingenuity, was the key to survival. The Zorothans, in turn, began to reconsider their approach to cooperation with other species. For them, this encounter had shattered preconceived notions about what younger civilizations were capable of, opening their minds to the possibilities of alliances and mutual support. On a more personal level, that humans began to reflect on the courage and resilience they had discovered within themselves. Many who had doubted their abilities or feared the unknown had been forced to act decisively, often improvising under extreme pressure. The experience taught them that the human spirit could rise to challenges far greater than previously imagined. They had faced fear, danger, and uncertainty, and emerged not only alive but triumphant. The knowledge of what they were capable of left an enduring mark on each individual, shaping their confidence, judgment, and sense of responsibility. The aftermath of the mission also had practical consequences. The humans had demonstrated capabilities that could not be ignored by other civilizations. Word of their ingenuity and courage began to spread, both among the Zorothans and, eventually, across other sectors of space. Humanity, once considered a minor player, had shown that clever thinking, resourcefulness, and determination could rival even the most technologically advanced species. This revelation would influence diplomatic, strategic, and exploratory initiatives for generations to come. Humans were no longer just observers in the galaxy. They were emerging as a species to be reckoned with. Even as they celebrated the immediate success, both humans and Zorothans reflected on the fragility of life and the unpredictability of the universe. The mission had shown that threats could appear without warning, and that survival often depended on quick thinking and collaboration. It also emphasized the importance of listening to calls for help, no matter how distant or improbable. Had the humans ignored the SOS, countless lives would have been lost, and an opportunity to forge interstellar alliances would have been missed. The moral of the experience was clear: empathy, courage, and a willingness to act could have consequences far beyond what anyone could predict. The humans also considered the implications for their own civilization. This mission had tested the limits of their technology, strategy, and endurance. It had shown that space exploration was not just about scientific discovery, it was about preparedness, adaptability, and the capacity to respond to unexpected crises. Leaders and scientists alike understood that every lesson learned from this encounter would shape the future of humanity's presence in space. They would develop new strategies, technologies, and training programs based on this experience, ensuring that future crews would be even better prepared for the unknown. For the Zords, the encounter was a revelation in another way. They had long relied on their superior technology and disciplined fleets to maintain dominance, but the humans had proven that cleverness and adaptability could level the playing field. They began to see value in alliances, in sharing knowledge, and in considering the potential of other species. The SOS, that had once been a simple call for help, had sparked a transformation in their thinking. The humans were not merely rescuers, they were catalysts for change, demonstrating that courage and ingenuity could influence entire civilizations. As the mission drew to a close, the humans and Zorthans shared a moment of reflection. They looked back on the danger, the fear, and the triumph, realizing that this encounter would remain in memory forever. For humanity, it was a moment of validation, proof that they could face the unknown and succeed. For the Zorthans, it was a lesson in humility and trust, a recognition that even young civilizations could contribute in meaningful ways. The experience had forged bonds that transcended species, fostering respect, cooperation, and hope for the future. The final moments of the mission were quiet but profound. The humans and Zorthans prepared to part ways, each returning to their respective territories, carrying the knowledge, experience, and trust gained from the encounter. Yet, the impact of what had happened would resonate long after the ships departed. Humanity had answered a call for help, faced seemingly impossible odds, and emerged victorious. The universe had witnessed a display of courage, creativity, and determination that would not be forgotten. In the end, the mission left an enduring message that even in a galaxy filled with powerful and dangerous forces, intelligence, bravery, and cooperation could make the impossible possible. That humans had proven that they could rise to challenges no one expected them to face, saving lives, forging alliances, and establishing themselves as a force to be reckoned with. They had not only answered the SOS, they had changed the course of events in that region of space forever. As both crews finally relaxed, knowing they had survived and succeeded, they carried with them the lessons learned. Courage matters, but cleverness and adaptability can make all the difference. Trust, cooperation, and willingness to act can turn desperate situations into remarkable victories. And above all, even a small or young civilization can have an impact far beyond what anyone might imagine, as long as it dares to step forward when the universe calls.